The Democratic Party net favorability. Back in 2018, when Democrats were able to take control of the House, they were actually on the plus side of the ledger. They were actually in positive territory at plus 1 point. Look now in 2026. We're not just talking down there underneath the Potomac. We're talking down there with the Titanic. We're talking 24 points underwater. And this is just the party overall. This isn't the congressional leadership. This is the party. The party. It's just a terrible, terrible, terrible brand. Terrible.
So it's another day and another reality check for the radical DSA communists taking over the Democrat Party, because as I think we may have said a million times by now, the simple reality is outside of their little bubbles, outside of deep blue metropolitan areas and within the Democrat Party itself, these people and their ideas are simply not that popular. So much so, there is strong statistical evidence they may drag down and ultimately cost Democrats in the midterms. And so this is why we've pointed out Democrats have a radicalism problem. You have an establishment way too scared to push back against or condemn these people or stop these people. But simultaneously, in sort of an ironic twist, not only might that cause them to lose power from the left, they might also lose some of their power from the right, because their lack of courage actually made them lose general elections. And we look at some recent polls and developments, we seem to see the signs of that. Not only, for example, among independent voters are the socialists highly unpopular, but we also seem to see this other sort of whiplash effect where among Republican voters, which keep in mind it's a midterm election year, typically voter enthusiasm is of course a major concern, the rise of the far left is energizing Republican voters, galvanizing them to be more compelled to turn out, and turnout means everything in these types of elections. And so, to make a long story short, after they let this snake, after they let this poison into their party, the Democrat Party is sort of feeling the effects of that from all angles. But let's talk about why in today's video. First, though, do us a favor. If you enjoy our content, make sure you hit that like button down below. Subscribe to the channel if you are new. That is the best way to support our work, and it also ensures that you can stay up to date with all of the latest news and coverage. And that said, this poll that came out this week, reported on by NBC, I think tells you everything you need to know. The favorability rating of socialism. Do you favor socialism or not? Among Democrats, 52% of Democrats now view socialism favorably, which I think is actually quite telling, right? That is now the majority opinion within the Democrat Party. More Democrats than not favor socialism. Think too, by the way, about how that's going to influence a lot of future elections. 2028, for example, may be a driving factor in a lot of these primaries as well this past year. Like, make no mistake about it. If the voters are the ones making the decisions and they keep being radical, they keep electing these people, and now socialism is the majority opinion in the Democrat Party, the Democrat Party in itself is inherently at this point now a socialist party, right? But still, regardless, even then, so that is something to know, right? Now the majority of Democrats favor socialism, and we've been trying to tell you, it's not just the politicians, it is the voters. The voter base themselves are the ones who have gone insane. Talk to your average Democrat, you'll see what I'm talking about. But still, regardless, there's still a lot of math here that we need to discuss. Because while that is a concerning statistic for the country as a whole, 43% of Democrats also still view socialism to be unfavorable. So it's not as if the DSA has 80% of support among Democrats. They barely are getting 52%, which is to say, although it might be the slight majority right now, socialism is still sort of controversial in the Democrat Party. Obviously, in order to win a Democrat primary, that 52% is enough. But what about a general election? You have a large portion of your voter base, for example, not that enthused with what's going on. But here, of course, is the most telling aspect. Here's what happens, basically, to the Mamdani DSA characters when they're forced to go outside of their little bubble in the middle of Brooklyn, New York, among independent voters. Oh, you mean to tell me the people who sort of decide the elections in many ways? Take a look at this. Only 17% of self-described independents view socialism to be favorable. 77% of independents view it to be unfavorable. And ladies and gentlemen, you never guess who's currently running the Democrat Party right now.
Socialists winning Democratic primaries, candidates from the far left. And look at this here. Among Democrats, this is that Fox poll, a majority have a favorable view of socialism. Step outside the Democratic Party, it's a totally different world. Look at independence, socialism, deeply unpopular there.
But wait a minute, commies, how could that possibly be the case? Because I thought your ideas were actually super popular. In fact, you're populists, you're standing with the working and middle class, you're unifying them based on your ideas. Oh, so why is it that the normal Americans actually kind of hate you? You know, your median, average, middle-of-the-road person deeply resents you, in fact, finds you to be repulsive in many ways, huh? I don't really get that. I thought everyone supports your ideas. In fact, Republicans, according to you, are just winning elections off of supposed culture wars because that's all just a distraction. And that's how the Republicans divide us by race and class because they don't want the working class to come together, all these sort of like leftist theory concepts. And then in reality, it's not even an election. They're just asking normal people, hey, how do you feel about this economic system? Oh, 77% of people are against it. Oh, pretty hilarious how that works. But I'm sure it's all just some like reactionary op, right? The right-wing propaganda famously in our public school system is what's causing that. Yeah, sure. Completely ridiculous and insane. Could it be possible you don't actually know what you're talking about? You live in a bubble and you're not actually this median American middle or working class person. You're a Brooklyn gentrification hipster LARPing as someone who actually works for a living. And that's sort of explaining the disparity, for example, among a certain circle of Democrats versus the rest of America, right? No, but surely that couldn't be the case. Yeah, keep running your DSA communists towards the general election. That's going to work out so fantastically for you. And by the way, this is not just affecting and turning off independent voters. Let's also talk about Republican voters. Because again, the major factor in midterm elections is turnout. Typically, the reason why the incumbent party loses is because the opposition party, they're mad at the president, they're kind of rallied up, they're galvanized, they're much likely to turn out, whereas oftentimes the incumbent party voters stay home. So that's really what midterms are about. That is the historical trend. Of course, the major challenge for Republicans more than anything is just get our voters enthused and excited to actually show up to vote to begin with, because that is what matters. Although currently we are seeing the signs, if nothing else, the fact that the left is just crazy and insane and publicly waving that much in your faces is indeed closing the enthusiasm gap between Democrats and Republicans to the point where it is effectively tied. And if you're the opposition party going into the midterms, you want to be winning the enthusiasm gap massively. If you're basically tied, that is for obvious reasons very bad news. But take a listen to now the other side of what this DSA revolution is indeed doing.
And Democrats have a lead, but again, to your point, if you add up extremely and very and you have pretty much a tie with Republicans hanging in there. How much do you think that the Democratic Socialist push around the country in some of these primaries and some of these elections that we've seen affects some of that motivation for Republicans?
Yeah, and I don't think that's much of a mystery. As a matter of fact, these people, although they're dangerous and threatening, and folks, we cannot get complacent, obviously, because it may be easier to beat a communist in a general election, but also if you don't do your job, now a communist has political office. So do remember that aspect. But in a way, they're doing us some favors because really, I think it's giving Republican voters something to feel strong emotions toward, right? Fear, anger, hatred, maybe even, right? But it's just important to understand these are the things that drive people to polls. At the end of the day, it's just the truth. It's true of both parties. But, especially on our side, when there may be reason for some complacency. Oh, we have the government, we have the president that we elected, et cetera, et cetera. And sure, Trump sort of helps with energy, but at the end of the day, he's not really on the ballot himself. So what better way to galvanize people and make sure we remind them that this election matters than them watching the other side be completely crazy and violent and insane, which they are, of course, all of those things in front of our very faces, right? What do you think is going to happen next, basically, as a result of that? We can't let these people have power. That is the message. You have to be terrified of Democrats having power. And that is a justifiable emotion, by the way. But because These people are waving it all on your face. And if you thought maybe Mamdani was a one-off thing because the Democrat establishment promised you that that was the case, of course, that is not happening. They're taking over primaries all across the country, even in some swing states. They're on track to win some of these nominations. But what better way to drive Republican turnout? And by the way, to turn off, as we saw earlier, turn off independent voters from the Democrat Party than this situation right here, and kind of tying together everything that we're talking about. This poll today, released by the Glenn Gariff Group, which is a pretty long-time pollster over in Michigan, basically highlights exactly what we're talking about, because needless to say, Michigan, more or less a swing state. This, of course, is a major Senate tossed-up race. And ladies and gentlemen, we've been talking quite a bit about it, but now that Democrats are on track to nominate DSA-endorsed, crazy far-left jihadi communist character Abdul al-Sayed, we've been speculating that may be a major mistake for Democrats over in Michigan, right? Because now you're talking about, you're running him in the swing state. This is the ultimate test. Is this viable? Are these ideas popular or not? And no reason to get complacent, but as you can see right here, Mike Rogers, according to this poll today, currently leading in Michigan of all places. Keep in mind, this is part of the blue wall historically. Trump has won it twice at the presidential level, but other than that, you know, it's kind of pretty blue. It's the bluest usually of the blue wall states, right? Mike Rogers, the Republican, leading Abdul al-Sayed, ladies and gentlemen, by 10 points, almost cracking close to 50%, that magic number. Now, it's one poll. Let's not take it for granted, but just an exact example of what I'm talking about, how this all comes together, right? Democrats, pick crazy far-left candidates. Run crazy far-left candidates. It's not just for New York City anymore. In a swing state, here's the reality check that's coming. Because independents are saying, no way, absolutely not happening. I'm not a fan of that. But also Republicans start to fear this person. They're like, okay, we really can't have that person in power. We need to go get excited and go vote enthusiastically instead of maybe staying home, sitting out the election, being a low propensity voter. And this is the result you get. That's the reality check. Okay? So to the far leftists, you know, take that information as you will. By the way, but forget them. I mean, they're crazy. We understand. To the Democrat establishment, have you maybe considered the fact as you sit there on your hands, you know, allowing the far left takeover of your party, in many ways celebrating it, that, hey, these people are actually costing you power, right? This is not some little Looney Tunes show going on in New York City anymore exclusively. This is going to cost you potentially the House and Senate majority, and you're just going to sit there and say, okay, right? I mean, I guess after all, you're powerless to stop it because, as we've explained many times, the communists are the ones actually in control of the party here, but still something to think about and honestly astonishing to witness. But anyways, guys, there you have it. That said, let me know your thoughts on this, guys, in the comment section down below. Be sure to leave a like on this video, subscribe to the channel if you are new, and until next time, God bless and peace.